we recording this?
Yes, ma'am.
Great.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our panel today. I hope we find you well and enjoying the weather, and you have recovered from the rainy day early this week. Today's panel discussion is regarding promising practices to address equity in the classroom. I'm joined today by two esteemed panelists, and I'll turn the floor over to Ms. Krause and Ms. Norfleet to sort of introduce themselves, as well as talk about their work with students and which institution they represent.
Okay, well, my name is Arness Krause, and I am a Communication Studies faculty member at Coastal Carolina Community College. I'm also the Vice President, External Relations for the North Carolina Community College Faculty Association.
Good afternoon. My name is Gabby Norfleet. I am in the College and Career Readiness Department at Vance Granville Community College here in Henderson. I am the administrative assistant.
Awesome. I have a snippet here regarding today's conversation, and it reads, inclusive classrooms are classrooms in which instructors and students work together to create and sustain an environment in which everyone feels safe, supported, and encouraged to express their viewpoints. In these classrooms, content is explicitly viewed from multiple perspectives and varied experiences across a range of diverse groups. Content is presented in a manner that reduces all student experiences of marginalization wherever possible, and helps students understand that individual experiences, values, and perspective influence how they construct knowledge in any field or discipline. Instructors in these classrooms use a variety of teaching methods in order to facilitate the academic achievement for all students. And lastly, inclusive classrooms are places in which thoughtfulness, mutual respect, and academic excellence are valued by both students and instructors. And so with that level set, the first question I have for each of you is, can you describe your specific definition of equity in the classroom, or does your institution have a specific equity definition for faculty and instructors?
Well, I guess I'll start unless you'd like to jump in here. Equity in the classroom for me, not on an institutional level, but in a classroom level, means realizing that everybody comes to the table from a different place, and understanding that those differences among your students are really an asset that can be used to create really meaningful dialogue in the classroom. And I think it's preparing students to be able to engage in dialogue that might be challenging at times, but is important to have so that we can really take a look at changing those differences into those assets and learning how to appreciate differences rather than focusing on them as being a liability.
For me, equity involves inclusion. And that means that we understand, as administrators or teachers, instructors, that we understand that not every student learns the same way, that we have to meet that student where they are and take them to where they need to be. And I'm privy to help with some of the professional development here. So I get a chance to help the instructors understand that you are not ever going to get a whole set of students that come in with the same mindset. These students come through different trials and tribulations and troubles to come to the classroom. So it's our job to include them, make them feel, warm, welcomed, and include them in some kind of way, whether it be an assignment, a group assignment. Maybe you need to invite them to the board when you're doing your lessons and stuff like that, and have that student understand what they're missing in the equation to get them to where they need to be. So for me, equity, a big part of equity is inclusion, including that student, making that student feel warm and welcomed into the classroom, making that student feel like they can ask questions when they need to, making that student feel like they can get the help that they need while they're in the classroom.
Thank you for those comments. And sort of a direct tie into the next question is, can you talk about or describe some strategies that you employ or your institution employs to create an equity-focused classroom?
Go ahead.
Well, for here at Van Scramble, like I said, I'm in the CCR department. So I know directly here on this campus, one of our instructors who's a veteran, he actually retired, but he's back part-time. One of the things that he likes to do is he likes to do a lot of group activities, and he likes to add technology in to make the students feel like they're learning and they're all on the same page, and they can all feel included in the assignment, and they can all raise their hand and ask questions. And he also does a lot of exercises where each of the students in the classroom get to come to the board and work a problem out. So that's one of the things that I feel like is promoting equity and inclusion in the classroom.
Okay. Well, I begin at the very beginning of class, getting to know my students from day one so that I can get a little background information on them to kind of gauge, measure where they're coming in from. So it is not uncommon to have 4 different generations in my classroom. It's not uncommon to have people from the very lowest end of the social economic spectrum to, middle or higher socioeconomic status. So there's a lot of things to think about, but I need to know where everybody's beginning from so that I can make those informed decisions about how to give them what they need to be included. So my goal is always from day one to create a learning community where we learn together and we're in it together. This isn't about me being the sage on the stage and students being individuals. It's about us being a cohort for the next 16 weeks and really as a community that can learn from each other, rely on each other, bring each other up, help each other out.
The next question that I have here is, can you describe the types of professional development or training that either you yourself have participated in or the training that's offered for brand new faculty or ongoing faculty at your institution?
We have, I know here at Van Scramble, we just finished up, we started in May with our instructors because we had onboarded 3 new instructors. We started with some of the things that we did was the content standards. We talked to them about data aggregation with their students. We talked to them about the test results, how to look at the test results and decide the best plan of action for the students. We talked to them about doing individualized student action plans so that students understand what they're working on while they're in the classroom, to take them from where they are, as I said, to where they need to be successful, to make level gains and be successful so that they can understand the materials that they're learning. We did the training for data lease, data tail. We started in May. We just finished up at the end of June our training with our instructors so that they understand the different levels and what's required of them in order to be able to help our students.
Here at Coastal Carolina Community College, there are a lot of initiatives that help address this. We do lunch and learns throughout the academic year, which focuses on a lot of topics that deal with equity and inclusion. And one of the first being understanding and recognizing microaggressions, understanding your own implicit biases as an instructor. Do you know what those are? And can you recognize those in the classroom? Because those are great learning opportunities. And they call it calling in and not calling out in the classroom, because you take that opportunity once you recognize a microaggression or some type of bias and you turn that into a classroom discussion. And those can be really, really rich dialogues, but you have to, number one, find out about your own implicit biases. I have all my students in communication do the Harvard University implicit bias test, and they all disagree with the results, which is always funny because we don't know that we have them. And that's why they're implicit and not necessarily explicit. So, once you know those, then you can take a look at your syllabi, take a look at your curriculum, take a look at your strategies that you're using in the classroom to determine if any of those biases are being demonstrated in there. What about your grading? What about your time frames? What about your no late assignment policy? So there's so many different ways implicit bias, microaggressions can sneak their way into the classroom, that being aware of those is really a key starting point.
And something you mentioned here, and it sort of directly ties into the next question that we have laid out for the panel, is how do you ensure your content is accessible to all types of learners as well as culturally relevant?
I'll let you go ahead.
Well, the first thing is take a look at your syllabi. If other instructors are anything like me, they have gotten ridiculously long so that we can include every thought that we have that we need to have on paper. One thing that we're finding in the research is that the students have a really hard time navigating through these ridiculously long syllabi. On average, mine are 8 to 10 pages. Yeah, because you have to have every policy on there, and if it's not written in the syllabi, it doesn't exist, kind of thing. But the students, are not going to navigate through all of that paperwork, and B, they may not really understand what it is you mean. So looking at your syllabi and making it more student friendly and making it more, so I've gotten into using a lot of graphic syllabi. So you can actually almost make your syllabi look like a graphic novel. And the students really love that because it's not like this written document that is intimidating to many of them, quite frankly. Then I go to looking at each of my assignments individually. Is there an opportunity in here to be more diverse in, say, my case study examples or any examples that I provide in class? Are there ways that I can be more inclusive in my rubrics? Because I use rubrics for everything. Are there things that I'm not thinking about that I need to be thinking about?
I know over here in CCR, we model a lot of what we do. We don't do syllabi, but we do the individual student lesson plans for the students based off the content standards. We do use a lot of different teaching methods. We mix up group discussions, we mix classroom, we mix technology, we mix a lot of different things so that each student is included, each student can feel like they're gaining something from it. Not just on an individual basis, but, that they're pulling something from what we give them, as a whole. And so that way it includes them and they don't feel like they're just at this standstill with, I'm stuck, I'm not learning, I'm not doing this. Technology, we mix up technology. We do things like virtual field trips. That's some of the different stuff that we do.
I can't hear you, JJ.
I can't hear you.
Sorry.
Okay.
I said I have a side question that goes along to both of those responses, and that is, how did you learn to do those things? I imagine that addressing your syllabi differently, or learning different strategies. Those are things you learn over time, sort of building your skill set. And so, can you talk about how those practices came into place?
Well, for me, I kind of cheat because I'm also a licensed clinical social worker. So part of being a social worker is about looking at research sources and looking at research. And one of the things that I'm invested in is providing equity in education, period. And in the beginning, we talked about what that looks like in the classroom and how it can be defined differently. Well, equity in education is really about lifting those up to where others are so that you have equal access, right? If somebody's down here because they can't meet their basic needs, then they're not at the same starting point. And so equity in that sense means providing the wraparound services that I think we're going to get to. A few of schools here in North Carolina provide it, but we really need to start thinking about education from a social work perspective and also from a wraparound services perspective. It's great that faculty learn this stuff. I learn it through research and practice. But the reality is faculty are being asked continuously to do more and to do more and to do more. And I don't think they really want to tackle the social work aspect of providing resources for their students. So I think we're going to have that bigger discussion. We have to have it on the campus, and it has to be a mission of the campus in order to be in the classroom.
One of the things that we've practiced here is a lot of professional development to gain the knowledge. And, you know, they talk about these different practices and what works best in these professional development sessions. Another thing that we have been able to do is reach out to several other different schools and gather information and data as to what has worked best for them so that we can try those different ideas amongst our students as far as enrollment and how do you keep your students engaged and what's the best practices to use for them in the classroom. So that has been some of the things that has worked for us, and especially since COVID.
Yeah. Do you find though, am I allowed to jump in? Do you find though that you begin to get pushback at some point from faculty? Because I was the chair of the professional development here for 4 years. And one of the things was, you know, that kind of was a resounding kind of feeling was, oh God, another thing you want us to learn how to do and to bring into the classroom. And the faculty just get exhausted because there's just so much strategies that are always being talked about. If it's not Bloom's taxonomy, it's, you know, being, using best practices. I mean, every year there's new buzzwords in education, right? Mm-hmm. And every year the faculty are told, well, this is something new you have to add to your repertoire. Do you find that you're getting some pushback from your faculty because they're just simply exhausted?
This, I will say this, I've been in this department a little over 11 years. And I will say that this is the first year that we have had the amount of attendance in these professional development sessions that we've had from our faculty. And part of that is they wanted to feel like the students were being successful. So they wanted to learn new things. They wanted to understand and address enrollment, you know, why the enrollment dropped off, why students were not attending, why we were not getting the completions that we should be getting out of the students. So this has been the first year that I can say that the majority of them that could attend these sessions, and they are applying what they learned for this, because it is important, you know, for students to come to your classroom and feel included and feel like they're going to learn something and feel like they can make their achievement. So this, like I said, this is the first year that I can say that has actually happened where we got them to come, you know, they asked questions, they wanted to know the different things that they could do with technology, they wanted to know the different ways to help students, you know, and talk amongst themselves and bounce ideas off themselves and everything. So this has been the first year that that's actually been as successful as it has been.
So it sounds like yours is voluntary, your professional development. Yeah, ours is not. It is not. So, and everybody really enjoys going to them. There's so many that are vastly interesting. It's just adding another thing to the toolbox that can get somewhat overwhelming, I think, for faculty.
So it's something we mentioned, and I guess we can't really ignore it. And so I guess I'll just ask the most general question that I can, and that is, how has COVID impacted the work of equity in the classroom? Obviously, the transition to online learning, different, faculty instructors, I guess, learning differing teaching methods or methods of delivery. Can you talk a little bit about how COVID has sort of shifted what we do both on the curriculum and CCR side of the house?
Sure. You want to go?
Well, I know for us, it was a really big push. It was a really big shock. We had a short window to transition everything, our instructors, to train them, our instructors, our students, to transition them to online. Some of the instructors, you could tell they were not fully equipped to do an all online class, but they did attend the training sessions that we offered, and they did put forth their best effort to learn the new technology, whether it was a new program. We used a lot with Google Sheets to help our students to be able to sign in, and we used a lot with the Google to get them online so that they could continue to learn. We did lose some students who just simply did not want to, they didn't want to be bothered with online. They want to be face-to-face with an instructor. But for the most part, it was not a huge drawback to the instructors because they did attend the training. They did say that, I do want to keep my class. I do want to help my students. I do want to be able to reach out to my students. I do want my students to learn. If you all will just help me come up with some tools and help me build my classroom so that it's online, which is what we did, so that the students can continue to learn, then I will continue to do my part so that the students can log in every day and learn, and I will create their assignments. I will make sure their assignments are posted each day. I will make sure they can reach me by phone. I will make sure that they can reach me by email so that there is no drawback to COVID being the reason why they can't learn.
Well, COVID impacted our institution and my classes just like every other school in North Carolina. But we know from research that COVID has hit minority and lower economic areas the hardest, and that was no different here. There were so many students who had to switch to the completely online environment, but didn't have the equipment that they needed and didn't have solid internet access. Or maybe I literally had adult students that would be sharing their laptop with their kids that were in school. And so it was a struggle for them to get their assignments in because they're having to share their equipment with their kids who are in school online as well. And so I feel, and I'm sure this happened at other schools as well, that our school really rose to that challenge well by loaning out laptops, hotspots, things like that for students to use to try to keep them engaged and get them to the finish line of the semester. I think also we did a great job. The faculty did a great job, going from basic, face-to-face ground classes to completely online. And I think we had like a week to do it. So I think they really rose to that challenge. And, I think at that particular time, there was a lot of stress about it, but there was also a lot of empathy between the students and the faculty and their departments, because this was so new for everybody and nobody knew what the outcomes were going to look like. We didn't have a lot of students drop out, not from my classes anyway. And I don't think overall a lot dropped out because they did have those physical resources, but they also had, like you mentioned, instructors who were really committed to getting them through to the finish line. And I think that meant a lot to them. But looking at the new normal, what does that look like? We're planning on going back face-to-face this fall, but as you mentioned, JJ, in the beginning of the session, nobody knows what that's going to look like in the fall, given everything that's happened. And the simple demand by the students to have more online classes is going to really force us to consider what equity strategies we can use for online classes, because they are different. And so some of the strategies that I've used with the online classes is trying to meet them the first week of the semester, even if it's only for 5 to 10 minutes. Tell me what's going on in your life. Tell me, how I can help you. Letting them know that I care about them, that their needs do matter to me and that they're important to me. Tell me what, is keeping, what you think might keep you from doing your best. I also continuously reach out to them throughout the semester, especially if it's a wholly online class. And they know I have an open door policy. If I respond to my emails within 24 hours. I give them my cell phone if they want to give me a text, because so many of them prefer to text now than to email. It's a real challenge getting some of my students to check their emails. They don't have any problem texting, but the emails can be a challenge. And you can use even certain programs now where you can, send text messages to your students from an anonymous phone number. But it's really that immediacy piece that I think keeps them going. It's that letting them know that regardless of where they are at this particular moment in time, we're their best cheerleaders and their biggest coaches, and we want to get them to the finish line. But I need you to tell me what's keeping you from doing that. Other equity strategies for online or in class are looking at the examples you're using. Like I said before, case studies. Are they representative of the same people in the class, or are we only using certain types of examples? Let's talk disabilities. We haven't talked about that, but equity also involves people with disabilities. Are we making every effort to reach those who have disabilities, whether it's in the classroom or online? And if we're not, we need to be looking at what we're doing so that we make sure that we do.
For those responses, as someone who's been a student for the majority of my life, this next question sort of relates to COVID. I guess, one of my greatest fears about our system, or about higher ed in general, is that I think 2020, 2021 can be summarized in one word, and that's giving grace and understanding of people's circumstances and sort of all the barriers and everything that we went through. And, students that are still on their academic path to a degree or a credential, whatever the case may be. How can we ensure that that grace is given in our new normal as we move forward, when things hopefully return back to normal?
Do you want to address that?
Well, I would say, as our other panelists said, getting to know your student. Every student has an individual need. Talking to your student, finding out, what that student needs, what is some barriers to that student's. I can speak for our department, specifically out here in Henderson. We run into a lot of students who do not have rides, or they're catching a ride, so they're only able to come to class 2 days a week, or a mother just had a baby. She's worried about coming to class to get her GED, but she still has to have her baby and have time to heal. So it's extending grace. It's letting that student know that we're not upset with you. We understand your circumstances. What can we do to help you out? Can we give you some assignments outside of class? What is it that we can do to extend ourselves over to you? We recently partnered with CARTS to make sure that the students, not just on our side of the house, but the other side of the house, we give them CARTS tickets to make sure that if they want to come to school, they're able to come to school. That has been a big success to our students, and we tell our students, not every student has internet. Not every student has a laptop. We have a laptop loan program that we have extended to our students, and hopefully coming up, we'll be able to purchase more laptops, at least 12 to 15 more laptops to be able to loan to our students, because not everybody has access to that. So it's us finding out what our students need to be successful and going further for that. If a student is out, call that student, find out what's going on. Did something happen? What can we do to accommodate that student to get so that student is successful in getting their credential? So
Well, that says a lot of what I would say. I think grace is something we need to practice with everyone. Uh, our colleagues, everyone on campus, our students, and I think the best way to do that is always remember that that person has a story, and you just don't may not know what it is. They're not a bad person because they are unable to do something. So rather than judging, describing, and then say, okay, so we need to find a solution to this situation. What does that look like for you? I think you have to empower the students. One of my concerns, and several of my colleagues have brought this up, it's kind of an interesting conundrum because one of the things that the students really expect us to do is give them life skills that they're going to be able to use out in the real world, in the workforce, right? They want that piece of paper because they want to go and get a good job. The problem is, and this is the conundrum, they're not going to get this kind of support in the real world. They're just not. Companies aren't going to do what we're doing for them. So how do you balance that? How do you support them, but also empower them to come up with their own solutions to what are inevitably going to be life challenges?
Basic student development theory of challenge and support, and how do we teach and empower students to learn how to fish, right? But also, giving them a fish or hook or rod or some worms if they are struggling from the beginning. Those sort of physical and or other types of resources.
Yeah, it's one of our participants here, Lori, is saying, she's having a hard time finding that balance, and I think we all are finding, it's a struggle because you don't want to enable, you want to empower.
In terms of resources, does your institution provide data to its instructors that's been disaggregated? And then how is that information used either to improve instruction and or classroom practices? Or are there any other resources that have been sort of helpful in understanding, the system office? So I think just a quick analogy, I always view the system office as like air traffic control, right? So we have all the data, all the information, all the system-wide course success rates, withdrawal rates, grades, all of those things. But what we don't have here at the system office are the strategies that faculty and staff are employing when they have this data and information. And so really trying to understand, once you have this data and information on the makeup of your class or, success rates of your students sort of historically, how does that change what you do in sort of your future practice?
Do you want to go ahead and address that?
I know for here, we previously had used Informa to pull together reports. We currently use Tableau to disaggregate reports. We also have what is called annual data summit, where not only on our side, but on the curriculum side, data is disaggregated and you can ask questions and it goes by classes. I know for us, we do ours, they disaggregate ours by the class itself. For us, and then Con Ed. So we use that on our side because we have to make performance measures. We use that to determine where our areas are weak and what we need to improve on and what we need to share with our instructors in order to get stronger in those areas and be able to help our students. And we use that as far as testing, who has tested, who has not tested, how many should we be testing, what should our percents be when we're testing. So.
I can't really talk to that. I know that our institution is working on this data, but it has not trickled down to us yet.
Gotcha. My next question here is, how does your institution assess faculty and instructors, whether it's end of the year reviews or course evaluations, sort of how do you assess whether a faculty or staff member is adhering to the policies or the campus environment or classroom environment that the institution is trying to create?
Well, for us, it's yearly reviews of the faculty and course evaluations. That's how they get the information from the students about how they felt in the classroom. And then we answer a long list of questions for our annual review, and then we talk about it with our chair.
I know for us on our side, we have a coordinator who does performance evaluations on the instructors, as well as classroom visitations, not only to offer support, but to find out, is there anything more that, as far as professional development training or information that we could be giving them to help them be able to help their students more successfully.
Is there something that the system office should provide, or are there strategies or tools or resources that the system office can provide to aid colleges in training faculty or staff, or should that be more so of a local decision?
I think anything that the system can provide would be useful. I think, addressing this basic needs issue is going to be a huge part of the component in getting true equity in the classroom. But when I read the equity program that the system has currently that they're reviewing, it's not talking about that as much as they need to be. I think that needs to be a larger part of this discussion, because it is keeping them from being able to address the financial needs of their private lives as well as going to school. Now, I know that there, research, having a repository of research, using different learning center strategies. Stanford's got some great learning resources. Having a repository for that would be great. Anything that, a toolbox basically that faculty can access when they have a question or when they're trying to figure something out.
I would say that the system office does provide good professional development, does provide good trainings. I've been in a lot of them myself. If people will tap into those, I can speak on my side of the house. I can't speak on curriculum, but I can speak on my side of the house, some of the trainings that I have been to, and some of the instructors that we employ have been to, such as the core credential certificate that they offer, which helps, it talks about the core standards, which helps the different areas to help your students become successful. So I can say that, there's never enough training, but I will say that people should tap into what is already available to them. And that way, if they see what's out there and they tap into it, if they have an idea, at that point, then they can let the system office know, hey, do you all offer this, or have you ever offered this, or this would be a good offering to offer to faculty and staff.
So I guess my last question or prompt before I guess I open it up to everyone, and that is, our system is currently advocating for, as you know, faculty and staff increased pay, both on all sides of the house. Can you talk about sort of the barrier of finding quality faculty or instructors to teach in different courses, and how that has maybe a trickle down effect on how information is presented in the classroom? Do you find it difficult to attract the faculty that you want, or find instructors that are of the quality you are seeking? I guess is more of a general question.
Well, being on the North Carolina Community Faculty Association board, we presented a letter to the legislators talking about left out and leaving and left out. And it basically discusses how schools all over the state are not only losing good faculty to private industry because of the difference in salaries, but there are some schools like Wake Tech, for example, that are looking to start programs that are very high skilled, quick turnaround into the jobs programs, and they can't recruit anybody because the disparity between private industry and academic fields are so not even close. And so to address the first part, no, I don't see it affecting the classroom at this point. I think if anything, it's making faculty feel less than appreciated by the state. Especially when you look at the numbers, we're one of the lowest paid in the Southeast region. When's the last time we got a raise? I'm trying to even remember. And that's part of student success, is having teachers that really feel valued and feel appreciated, but also that can meet their basic needs. If your faculty and your staff can't meet their basic needs, then how do they perform in the workplace? That's a real concern for a lot of people. So, some faculty, especially with families, are having to make some hard choices. Do they stay where they're now 9% behind where they started out because of inflation? Or do they go out into private industry? Tough choices.
I can't speak to the faculty on the curriculum side of the house. I know on my side we have not had anyone that specifically has asked for an increase in pay or when there would be so far. Their main thing is making sure that they have enough planning time to help the students or do individualized lesson plans or something like that right there. So far we have not on my side had these big talks about raises or pay increases, or because the majority of our faculty are part-time. So we have more staff that's full-time, such as myself, than we do have faculty. So being that the faculty is part-time, then there's not a lot of talks of that on the CCR side.
And then my absolute last question is, what is one thing you would like attendees to take away regarding this topic, and or a practice or something that they should replicate or look at for their institution? Is there one tidbit that we should focus on as we return and re-engage students in the fall, or is it a myriad of approaches that are probably needed?
For me, let's keep the dialogue going, because I think this discussion has the possibility of being so much broader than what it's currently at this point. As a faculty member, I would say look at each of your students as a unique individual with their own story. And if we know that story, we're going to be so much more empathetic and compassionate and able to engage in grace with those students, rather than getting angry and frustrated and not being able to meet the student where they are.
For me, I would say that try to remember that learning is not one size fits all. That you're going to have, a different myriad of students that come in at different levels, different stories. They're going to get different takeaways from it, but inclusion in the classroom is very important. And as our other panelists said, extend grace as much as possible to the students.
Well, I'd like to thank you both for our panel today. We have about 5 minutes left. If there are any questions from the audience, If not, we'll sort of pause here for a few seconds. We'll give folks about 5 minutes back in their day to run to the restroom before our next session or take a break. And so we'll pause and see if there are any questions or comments here in the chat. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and end this broadcast, and I'll say, Ms. Krause, Ms. Norfleet, thank you for your wisdom and expertise. And as a representative from the system office, thank you for everything that you do for the citizens of our state and the students of our system.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.